Hello.
Hey,
Fantastic to see you.
great seeing you.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm absolutely awesome as always. So, thank you very much for joining. It's great to see you. And can you give us a little introduction to yourself, if that's okay?
Yes, of course. So, hi learners out there. I'm Cindy, and I actually was born in Taiwan, which is a small island near the south of China. But we're an independent country, so
Mhm.
I grew up in Canada, and I also lived in Israel before, which some people find it pretty amazing.
Mm.
Yeah, quite interesting background. I came back to Taiwan for university, and I have been teaching for the past year.
Okay, are you
And
enjoying it?
yeah, it's really
Mhm.
enjoyable. I really enjoy when my students give me really good feedbacks about their learning and their growing, and yeah, it's been really fun.
Okay, that's fantastic to hear. Give me a bit of information on your handle. I think your handle's kind of interesting with the three eyes in it. Was normal Cindy English just not available, or was this your own twist on things?
Um, well, for me, I actually didn't really start out as being an English teacher.
Hmm.
I used to work in the marketing industry. So I used
Mhm.
to do some digital marketing, and I worked as a PR in a very traditional company before. And I found that, well, teaching is something that has been getting very popular, and I think that's something that English is what I found I had an advantage in when I
Yeah.
was living in Taiwan here. So I really found that it was fun to help out people and students when I was in college. And also something else interesting that I think you would be interested in is I'm actually doing some free walking tours. So I'm being
Oh,
a
really?
volunteer tour guide in
That is
Taipei
super cool.
yeah, when I have some time on my hands. Yeah, so I really enjoy sharing about Taiwan's culture with travelers and to make new friends from all around the world.
That's great. Are you in the? I'm not so good. My geography is reasonable, but like for Taiwan itself, I'm not so great.
Yeah.
So, are you within the main city in Taiwan?
Yes, I live in Taipei.
Taipei, yeah.
But teaching has also allowed me to work remotely. I teach
Mm,
online mainly.
yeah,
So
sure.
I just came back from Hawaii for 3 months of traveling. Right, I really
Mm.
enjoy just traveling, meeting new people, and yeah, getting more of a glimpse of the world, I
I'm
think.
massively jealous. Sounds glorious.
Well, you live in Japan. I'm jealous too of all the food, all the good food you get to eat there, right?
Yeah, it is pretty good food, but I mean, Hawaii, yeah. Hawaii's Hawaii. It's like the dream destination for everyone, isn't it?
Yes,
So, three
def
whole months.
yeah.
That's great. That's really cool. What did you enjoy most about being in Hawaii?
Well, I'm actually a surfer. You can see from
Ah,
my
lush.
tan. So I'm kind of chasing my waves around the world, actually.
Mm.
I've been to different countries. Last year, I went to Spain as well. Went to Europe for 30 days on a cruise ship. And yeah, I've been going around. And next week, I'm going to Vietnam to find some nice waves as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I can
Yeah.
show my students where I am. So they
Mm.
usually are really happy to see the beach. I used to live by the beach, so
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's so unique. Do you have? That's interesting. I always wondered about people who do lessons outside via the internet because obviously there's a lot of sound around. So does that affect your lessons at all?
no, I make sure that my students can hear me quite clearly,
Mm.
but I get to show them where I am,
Mm.
and yeah,
That's
they're dying to see the new views around. Yeah.
yeah, that is a unique way to. How can I say? That's a unique way you can market yourself in a sense, and also
Right,
enjoy your
right.
time. Yeah, so that's so cool. Yeah, one day you could be outside the Eiffel Tower doing a lesson, and then another day you could be.
That
But
would be really awesome.
mm, but maybe obviously beaches are much better, I think, especially if you love surfing. So how long have you surfed for?
Not that long, 3 years. And yeah, I'm challenging myself this year to join some competition. So
What?
I'm really encouraging my students to try new things. Some of them just feel jealous and envy of my life, but I encourage them to try new things because surfing is something I just found I loved 3 years ago. So it's
Oh,
something
yeah.
that I think everyone not really sure about what you're interested in, but always be open to new experiences and new opportunities,
Yeah,
and you
totally.
might find something. I even went skydiving. Have you been skydiving
I,
before?
no, never. I'm not very good with heights, so I can't even imagine how I'd be with with skydiving. I've like pondered on it. Let's put it that way. That's about it. It won't go farther than my living room, maybe, or in the pub with my friends, you know. But it would be a nice event to go to if I had the courage to. That's so cool, man. That's so
Right.
awesome. You've managed to do so many good things already.
What are your interests?
Mine are pretty standard, not so exciting. My family is my biggest interest. That is obviously super exciting for me. And
Right. That's
I
awesome.
like football or soccer,
Is
depending where
that
you're from.
popular in Japan?
It's becoming more popular. Baseball's the thing here. Baseball's the big
Baseball,
sport.
right, right.
Yes, actually the best. I don't know if they still are, but last year they were the best country in the world at playing baseball. So it's interesting because I thought America was the only place. So it made it.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. But that's not my kind of thing so much. But I do, yeah, like I say, football, or I'm kind of enjoying doing the lessons, the Instagram posts actually. Hi, Charlie, nice to see you. I'm kind of enjoying the Instagram posts, to be honest. It's really, really fun to get, like you say, the feedback's lush, but a bit different to a one-on-one session, obviously, but it's fun still, nevertheless.
Yeah,
I
I seen
love,
you.
oh, sorry, please.
Sorry, I seen you've been really active on doing all your posts and all your live feedbacks. I think it's really great.
I don't really yeah, I put stuff out, but I don't like. I would love to do a bit more, something much more like yours, which is much more needs a bit more finer technique, you know, and looks so beautiful like your posts do. But I
I'm
just
not
don't.
really a designer.
It looks really good, like each one. So like it inspires me to try and do more, but then it's just time. Time is the killer for me, unfortunately. But if you put the time in,
Right,
it looks
right.
really nice, like you've shown. So yeah,
But
for sure.
still, if people are learning from your posts, then it doesn't really
Yeah,
matter what it looks like actually,
yeah. I
right?
decided at the start of the year it's better to do than not to than just to talk about it, you know. And for a
Right.
long time, that was me and my pattern. Pattern was just to talk about doing something and not do it. So I re- at the end of last year, I did some online teaching. I loved it. Just I had a goal of money I needed to reach because of certain reasons, and I was going on holiday, so
Hmm.
I put a lot of time into teaching online, and then
Right.
really enjoyed just talking to people and helping them. And so this year I decided to do this. I stopped doing online, and I've just concentrated on this, and it's been just as fun. So hopefully
Great.
continue. What made you start doing your Instagram profile?
Instagram. I actually started a blog, and the
Oh,
reason for that is since my online classes are not as long, usually 15 minutes,
hmm,
um, I found that there are some things that needed more explanation being done. Like it wouldn't only be like a 5 minute or like a very short explanation. So I started to put together a lot of common mistakes I found from students. And so the blog thing just kind of grew from there. And then one of my friends said, well, I really love looking at your blog. It's really easy to read. Why don't you put it on Instagram? Like, I believe that a lot of more people would be interested in it.
hmm,
And there's a lot of pictures that you can already put onto it. So that's what really made me start Instagram because I didn't really think I had that much time because I think
yeah,
that to run or to put up daily posts, you really need to. I don't want to just do it. I kind of really have like, I really want to design it and to make it all pretty.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, so it does take more time. But yeah, it's been fun. So, I think I've been getting a lot of good feedback as well. So, yeah, so far it's been pretty fun. And
Yeah,
I
I'm
do
not
enjoy
surprised.
designing. So
It
maybe
looks,
that's like a side project now.
yeah, yeah, definitely. That's the great thing, I think, like about doing things like this, like putting yourself out there and doing something different and trying new things, like especially like this. It's so easy just to do online teaching, but not do the extra side of it. And I think like I've built so many skills just from doing it, and by the sounds of it, you as well, with
Yeah,
the designing
definitely.
side, that has opened up new creative opportunities for yourself. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And there's actually been some other, not just like my students, but other students who have reached out and said it really helped them as well. So I feel like it's not really, you don't really need to have one-on-one classes to really inspire someone or to help someone. It's just
Yeah.
these things that you can do that other people will benefit from it too. And to be honest, I don't really think you really need a teacher to improve daily speaking. You can do it with a language exchange, or you can find a partner. As long as I want my students to keep on being able to incorporate English into their daily lives. So
Yeah.
I tell them, if you don't have time to have class with me, it's totally fine. I understand everyone is busy, but you should try to make at least 5 or 10 minutes every day, even if it's just going to work. Listen or watch some English videos, listen to some podcasts. Little by little, you're going to improve. Like baby steps, right? Baby steps.
Yeah. No, I love that you've just said that, because that is like my whole thesis. Like, I don't think, to an extent, I don't think you need to pay for anything anymore in regards to teaching, especially English, because there's so much material out there, like YouTube or Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, as we're
Right.
finding out ourselves, and
Right.
different platforms like that. And
Right.
there's so many opportunities for people. Google is like my mother, basically. I could just type anything in and find out all the information, so on any topic. So I think people don't need to pay out so much money necessarily. I think speaking is the reason why you should pay for a teacher
Yes,
personally,
yes,
because
that's right.
especially if you live in a country that doesn't have native speakers, and a teacher is very specific as well. Like they can. There's a lot of information out there, and it's very
Yeah,
easy to get lost. And a teacher can be like, you need to improve this, this, and this, and you're on your track to know
right,
exactly what you're
right.
practicing.
So it's more of a like a coach. It's not you need a teacher every day,
Mm,
but they can help you to guide you. Maybe I would encourage them to have class with me once a week, or even break down the lesson to 25 minutes, but to see me more often.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
but
exactly.
also to practice. Like you can't say like, oh, I only have one class a week and you expect your English to improve, like skyrocket or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. People have no. I think the biggest weakness for everyone, not just learners, but for everyone in general, um, they don't have any concept of time whatsoever. You know,
Yes.
so when people say to me, like, I hate especially, those courses that say become fluent in 3 months, because one, it's
Uh-huh.
not possible, and two, it's like
Right.
it's such like a clickbaity thing for me. It's just to get money off of people who are really desperate at that point, because it's really it's
Yeah.
not a course that does it, it's your effort that does it. There's not one
Exactly.
course that can do
Exactly.
it. And I think, yeah, I love your sentiment. It's perfect. It's exactly what I think. So it's I hope, I've noticed more teachers having that style. They're starting to pull away from it's all like a money. It felt very money orientated, and now it's
Right. Right.
becoming more about the person, about each individual person, which is what it should be, for sure.
Right. And I also think that what's really important is that a lot of my students they want to learn English because of their interests. So
Mm.
I always ask them first about why they want to learn English, because I think it will differ a lot depending on why they want to learn English. So if they want to learn English because they want to travel, then conversational English is something that they will need to be more familiar with. You need to order in a restaurant, you need to order your coffee. If you don't want milk, you want soy milk, how do you say all these things? But if you want to improve for TOEFL or for a test, then that's going to be something way different. So it really depends on them, but I will ask them to tell me about their interest so I can incorporate that into my classes. Because if you're bored for English class, then you're not going to be passionate about learning English.
Yeah, but yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Everyone learns in different ways. I think having their, like you said, essentially like the hobbies or what they're interested in as the base for them to branch out within English is very useful. Yeah. Otherwise, it's super tough for them, you know. And for me myself, like I'm learning Japanese, and I'm not a lesson person. I never have been, you know, like someone who can just sit and listen to a teacher because I have to learn. And it's great that now we can talk about these kind of things, like how different people learn and how we can help each individual based on how they work best. Some people love reading. I'm not a reader. Right. Some people love reading. Some people love listening. Some people love video, you know. Some people love just talking to people. So it's great that there's so many options now.
That's true. So you really need to find what you're interested in and what you love, and then you will start to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Right? And then something suddenly unlocks. Not again, like you said, the beauty of blimey, every live I think I do that. The beauty of the internet now is you don't have to just rely on one teacher, you know, whereas when we were younger, maybe we would have had no choice, you know, just the people around you. So there's a good opportunity to try different people. Instagram's great because you can have a million different teachers from different places, learn a bunch of stuff each day, you know, on your feed. So I think that's so good. It's great that so many people are trying to help people as much as possible. So that's fantastic. How long? So you said you've been doing it for about a year, yeah?
Yes, online teaching for a year. So I've tutored before when I was in college, but it was more face-to-face. So online teaching has been quite an adventure for the past year since I get to travel around and to work remotely.
Yeah, definitely. Well, double adventure, yeah? Because talking to a camera is different to talking face-to-face, yeah?
Yes, it's different, but I don't think that the learning process is, if you get the hang of it and if you use the material wisely and if you can like circle the material and be interactive with their students. I even have some students who are 5 years old and they can still sit in front of the screen with me for 25 minutes. So
that's great. That's really good. It's tough for kids, especially.
Exactly, to be so concentrated for such a long time.
Yeah, definitely. So you've, like you say, you've been to many places whilst teaching. As you do some stuff outside, has there been any experiences you've had which have been like something in the background, negative is happening, you know?
In the background? Usually I try to make my backgrounds like a wall here, like you see here. Okay. Yeah, so nothing funny has ever really happened. But because I'm quite close to my students now since I see them quite regularly, so they're more friends and they'll be like, "Oh, what is this? What is that?" And then I will show them like my surroundings and they'll be quite interested in that.
That's cool. I think that's great. That really is. It's better than just being in one place for the student anyway. So something can take their mind off for 10 seconds and then come back into the conversation. And it's good for like good ways to break up the lesson. So it's super useful. That's so cool. That's great. How have you found, so you started off with your blog, and now you're doing Instagram and you're on TikTok as well. How have you found the difference between each platform?
Well, I'm quite new to TikTok. I'm just sort of getting the hang of the 15 seconds, which is like really short amount of, you need to cramp like all your material, and I sometimes feel like maybe I talk too fast and trying to fit into the little like 15 seconds.
Mm.
Um, but I think for the blog, it's the place where you want to explain everything fairly well. So Instagram is kind of like the gateway. So if
Yeah.
they're interested in what you want to say about, so you catch their attention and then you will guide them to the gateway to your blog and tell them that, oh, there's more there. So if you are interested in this topic, then this is something that you can look into. I will explain
Yeah.
more there. But if it's not something that you find it that you're having problems with, then it's something that you will just take a second to glance and you're just like, oh, this is cool. And then sort of just like go to the next post.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's cool. So have you had many people go from Instagram to your blog now, and
There's
have been checking
definitely
it
been
out
more
more of you?
traffic.
Ah, great.
There's been more traffic, yes. But I think the blog is still more focused on, I provide it to my students when I find that in the classes they're making these mistakes. So
It kind of
I
works
will,
hand in hand, yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah, it does, it
you've
does.
got you've almost got content for Instagram readily available because you're getting it live from a student, and then actually one student's issue is actually a million people's issue, so it can benefit many people. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
find that there's sort of a pattern. Like if one of the students has been having this issue, then other students I find are also having the same issue.
mm.
And then so I would pitch them the same blog post.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really cool. That's great. That it sounds like you put a lot of time in. So you obviously care a lot about your students, which is super important. And I think sometimes that gets lost, by some teachers.
Oh,
So
of
that's
course. Like I think you do form a relationship with them and you feel
mm,
like their improvement, if they're not improving, it's something maybe you haven't really found the way how they learn. So
yeah,
then I
that's
would
it.
try
That's it.
something new and something different.
Yeah, that is 100% it. I mean, like, I always I always think back to like that teacher at school that I couldn't quite get all the information off because they taught in one style. And back then there
Right,
wasn't so
right.
much information about each person having their own the intake. So, and people always remember the bad teachers and rarely, and maybe one good one. So it's super interesting, but it's just how can one person, same with Instagram in a way, how can one post be transmitted between every single person? It's impossible, isn't it? And the same for that one
Right, right.
teacher with 30 kids or however many kids. He can't attack every single person in the correct way. So,
Exactly. Everyone has their own
interesting.
issue.
Mm,
So it's really hard if you have a 30 student class to find everyone's strengths or how they learn and to
mm,
incorporate that. But on one-on-one, I'm focusing on this one student. So I need to make sure that I know that they're improving class after class or what their problems are. If it's speaking, is it listening, is it their pronunciation? Give them some guidance, even if it's not during class, what they can do after class for practice. And that will give
yeah,
them a lot more information there. So I think this is the part where the teacher becomes more important. They can really be the coach of the students and
yeah,
they
yeah,
can
yeah,
give you the
completely.
feedback that you need because usually for language exchange or people you just need to chat with, they don't really correct you and you don't know what you're doing wrong. They just kind of go along with it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's tough. Learning a language is all confidence, isn't it, basically? So it's super interesting when I was doing some sessions online, and especially at the start more so than the end, because you build your own skill set as a teacher as much as anything. And I think like I'm not bad. I'm like kind of laid back and can kind of summarize the situation. But I found at the start I just naturally speak fast by accident. you know, and then, you know, as you do teaching more, you slowly slow up your speed, and then each new person you start slow until you work out their ability level. You know, it changes.
Right,
But
right.
the students would never say, "Oh, you're going too fast for me." And then when I saw it's obvious, like eventually it becomes obvious that they didn't understand, and I say, "Oh, you can tell me any time." And they said, "No, it's fine. It's just good to listen to a native speaker." But for me, that's not. Although, like hearing, you don't want to pause every second because you want to build up that cognitive part of your brain that just understands
Right.
automatically and can, if there's something you don't understand, you can move on and still understand the concept. Still, there still needs to be elements where you need to pause and do like a, not necessarily an exercise, but just to address the issue, you know. And so I ended up doing like every 5 minutes I would just check back, because I don't like pausing
Exactly,
every second,
exactly.
you know. That's
That's
the
very
worst.
important. That's very
Mm,
important. So I find that I think for Taiwanese students, they're more polite. So
mm,
if I ask them, oh, maybe you find that in your Japanese students. So they don't really tell you they have a problem until you ask them to check and say, oh, so can you tell me what this means?
yeah.
And then they will be stuck and they will say, actually, I don't really understand. And then so when that keeps on happening, they will just ask at the end and say, "Oh, I don't know what this means. Can you please explain this?" And now try to explain it in other words.
But that's all the part of a normal conversation anyway. You know, like
Right.
we both have different backgrounds, yeah. So there's going to be words that come up where we both are unsure of what's being
Mm-hmm.
said, yeah. Especially American English, I'm awful for American English. So any kind of like miss words that I've not heard so often, what you just automatically say to the person, "Oh, what are you saying?" Or you say like in a strange way. You don't say it politely necessarily, but you say it
You
like
just
to
look
get,
at him funny.
yeah, 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 or something similar, yeah. And then they give you the information, but learners don't do that, and that's actually like a natural part of conversation. So it's super interesting that I think they're worried about worrying the teacher, you know,
Right, right.
you
They're
know.
being very polite.
Yeah,
I
but
think
that's good.
that's something to get used to.
Mm, yeah, I think that's good as a teacher. I think like for me, I enjoyed at that when I was doing it. I enjoyed having those moments because I was building my skills to realize like this isn't quite working here, or you know, you could feel it out. How have you found your learning curve since starting?
You mean for my students?
Mm,
Well, I think in the beginning, usually a lot of my students, they will expect, because I'm from Taiwan, they will expect me to speak Chinese or Mandarin. But at the beginning of the classes, I tell all my students, I believe if you want to learn English well, you need to learn how to think in English. I do
mm-hmm.
understand Chinese, and what I can do is I can understand what you're saying, thinking in Chinese. So when they speak a sentence and it's not in English, like an American would probably just look at them and say, I don't
Mm,
understand what you're saying. But in my mind, I can know what they are saying in Chinese. So I will tell them and say, this is not how we say it in the native way. This is how, and then I would provide the correct way of saying it. But I
yeah.
will still not say it in Chinese or in Mandarin.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I think it's difficult, isn't it? There's two schools of thought on that. Well, there's more, but you know, like two basic ones. So it depends on the level, doesn't it? If someone's a complete beginner, full immersion maybe is a bit rough, but they can learn. Don't get me wrong, but it's tough, isn't it? Like really tough for a complete beginner. But
Right, right. So usually my students are more of an intermediate, so
mm,
they have a certain level. Even the kids, they learned English in school, so they
oh
got the
yeah, yeah,
basic.
sure.
Right. So for me to try to put them in an environment where it's all in English, that is where the learning curve goes really fast. They will have to get used to my 25 or 50 minutes of all English. and they will need to express themselves, even if it's okay if you don't know how to say, for instance, basketball. You don't know how to say it in English. It is totally fine. I will ask you, oh, okay, so what sport are you trying to say? How big is the ball? What color is it? How many players are on a team, right? There's different ways of expressing yourself, even if you don't know what the word is. But as long as you can use other words or other ways to let me understand this, then I think it's totally fine.
Yeah, definitely. It's tough though, isn't it? I get the confidence thing, because like I have the same issue in Japanese, so it's very easy to preach. Like I'm very good at preaching the right thing to do, but doing it myself is another matter, you know. And it's super tough for students, especially. I get it, but it is the best way to work. Is as soon as you can ask questions, your English is unlocked. Basically, it's basically free reign after that. As soon as you get over the fact of asking questions, you know, you're pretty much. It's a big step forward anyway.
Yes.
To unlock yourself, you know, because you're going to regret after that lesson you've paid for if you don't ask a question as well. That's the crazy thing, you know. Something that you think is important, you'll regret it afterwards. So it's worth, if you're in a lesson, it's more than worth like spending the time to ask, and don't feel like the teacher, you're worrying the teacher. The teacher's there for that reason. So it's crazy, really. But yeah, it's tough for a learner.
So I always ask a lot of questions in my lessons. I make sure they really understand it, and I sometimes think it's necessary to even ask them, oh, well, can you make your own sentence? Which is the hardest part. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think at the beginning, it's very intimidating for some of my students because they feel like their English level is not so or high enough to be able to just give me answers, throw me answers. At the beginning, I tell them, don't worry if you make mistakes. You're supposed to make mistakes in my class. If you don't make mistakes, then I really am going to start worrying about, do you really need to be in my class, right? If you're saying everything correctly, then there's nothing, you don't really need me to actually teach you anything or correct you.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I had a similar situation to that, actually. I had a student who's really high level, like I'd almost say higher than myself, because as a native speaker, we don't learn via the textbook. So it's a very, very different style. So there's a lot I can teach that's not correct if you look at it in a textbook style, but it's like the most used form, you know. Right. Like I can obviously teach a textbook style as well, but what I'm saying is there's my general level is not the same as a learner in a sense, because of the grammar is so perfect if you really focus on it and you get good. I had one student like that whose level is super high, and then to come up with new and interesting topics for that person who luckily loves English, so it was there was a lot to go with because of obviously English. There's so much different content, you know. But for this student, yeah, I had to really research, and I learned a lot myself about the language, let alone for them, you know. So it's super interesting. Like idioms I would use on a regular basis, but don't know the definition for example. And as soon as you don't know the definition, when you try and teach it, if you don't know, it's super vague, you know, like I try and explain right. and it doesn't make sense.
So I totally get you.
Yeah. To be able to learn that skill, to find out about my own language, that's kind of humbling in itself, but has made me a better teacher, because now I have no problem researching, and then I feel it can be super clear for the student, which is the most important thing.
Right. So I have even some students who are doctors or veterinarians.
Yeah.
And they've been sharing with me a lot of things. Like I usually just start off with like, oh, how's your day at work, right? So my doctor student tells me about, oh, what type of surgery he's been just in, and I'm using these really scientific words. And I'm just like, oh, so what exactly is it that you do during the surgery? And then he takes the time to explain it to me, and then I find like, wow, this is really interesting. Like I did not know that.
Well, some of the words, yeah, I know. Especially
yeah, exactly.
Like, well, every language, sorry, I've got to turn my fan on because my phone's getting a bit hot. Every language is kind of, but to know all those scientific terms, see, that's kind of useful for you because you now find out something you would never have researched, maybe, you know. That's what I kind of enjoyed about teaching, in a sense, because of that. It was so good, like, similar, like, I had a lot of software, what do you call it? I'm thinking of the wrong term, but someone who works with software. So there's a lot of terms they were talking about. Yeah, an engineer is probably the correct term.
Okay, that is way out of my
yeah,
field
massively
now.
out of mine as well, but I learned a lot just from them. I had some like overarching knowledge, but not like a vast, in-depth detail like they do, you know. And yeah, it was interesting. I learned facts that could help me in daily life, let alone for English, you know. So it's super,
Right.
super. It's a great job in that respect. You can learn something from different cultures as well online. Is so good.
Right, exactly. I
What
feel like
kind of?
online teaching is the funnest part about it is that
Mm,
I get to customize my curriculum. So I will ask my students what they're interested in. Some of my students are interested in like wine or beer, which aren't really my specialty. So I've been like researching about it and trying to make a lesson about like the different terms, and I've learned a lot, and it's really fun to find different type of articles or different information for my students, and then to learn more new things in class. So
yeah,
it's
that's
really
so
fun.
cool. That's great. Yeah. So you've it's again time. It's time, isn't it? So
Oh,
once you be,
really?
once you become like no, sorry, I mean it's time like the amount of time you spend. It's like once you become closer, because I felt the
Right.
same feeling as well. Once you get to know more about their families or whatever, because you do build up this relationship with them or their lifestyle or something, you can ask them more personal questions. Because at the start it's like,
Right.
what's your hobbies? And then,
Exactly.
so I'm a football fan, so I had a student who loves football, and then we could have some banter about his football team who are doing badly or something, you know, and it builds up like a strong bond. But when you can ask more personal questions like that, although you have to put the time and effort in for some of them to like research a
Right.
bit more information, it's so worth it in the end, isn't it?
Yes, that's something that you mentioned. Actually, one of my students, she broke up with her boyfriend a couple months ago when I actually did I started to do some mind mappings because I found it was a great way for students to learn new vocabularies, how to
Mm,
link the words together. And I did one about the love languages. I don't know if you've heard of that before, the 5 love languages.
it's interesting
Well,
that.
I'll send you that article. So
Please, I'd love
it's
to
a
hear.
really interesting way of how you look at love, how
Mm,
people perceive love in different ways. So some may need words of encouragement, some may need physical touch. So there's like a test that you can test out, and I have it in my blog actually, and it's quite interesting because I really found that it was really helpful, and I found that that's a way that you can really see how maybe your loved one or even your friends, it can help them to know their other half even better. And what are the ways that you can do? Like for me, sending gifts or receiving gifts isn't really something that I find so important. But
mm.
my other half may think that, oh, because I receive gifts and I love receiving gifts, I should do that to you as well. And that's how
Oh,
I
yeah,
show
yeah.
you my love. But for me, it's not how I perceive love. So I don't feel your
Mm,
love. So that's
yeah,
something
yeah,
that's
okay.
quite fun. But the thing is, I spent some time to make this article for her. And then a week later, she tells me, "Oh, I broke up with my boyfriend." I felt so bad for her. So we had
Mm,
the class ended up being me trying to comfort her and
yeah,
having an English conversation with more of an emotional aspect
mutual
of
support,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I said to, I had a live last night with someone, with an English teacher called Emma, and
Hmm.
we talked about, I mentioned about like how many hats a teacher actually has that you miss out, that people don't see, you know, and that emotional support side as well, when you get close, with your students is great. It can be great. It can be fabulous, and also like not demanding, but quite can pull on your own heartstrings. So it's tough, and it's super tough in those moments, you know. So, but it's nice to know that they feel comfortable enough with you to be able to talk. So you know that's great, and they get a bit of release, and it's kind of good for everyone, I think.
Yeah, I think it's great. So they have some trust in you, and you two really create a bond between you two. I think that's something really special.
Yeah, 100% so. Okay, so that's really interesting so far. Some fantastic stuff. I wrote down some questions, but haven't looked
Oh,
at it yet.
okay.
So some people have asked me a few different questions. Have you got any tips for learning vocabulary? Like learning a lot of vocabulary at one time. I've got my own way, but how about yourself?
Okay, well, I have a few ways because I think my students, they often tell me that they can't really remember new words very easily. One of the ways is what I mentioned before about mind mapping. So to have a concept. So if we're talking about, let's say, animals, then you'll start with animals, and then you'll grow your web, and you'll have the different types, or you can even categorize it in your different ways. So it's how your brain works. It's kind of like a web, and you need to connect it with things you are familiar with. So you kind of make a web. So that's one way I would do it. If we're talking, sometimes I would discuss a video with my students, and if it's like we were talking about, it was one of those animal videos about it was a funny video about a dog, chicken soup, and how to make the chicken soup. So we will start with the chicken soup, and then we will have the ingredients. And
Yep.
then so each of the ingredients, and to be even more specific, you can describe it. So say like we will have carrots. Carrots are orange, right? And then you will connect it out into different parts. So that's one of them. Another way is that I would ask them to make up sentences. So maybe this one word, what it incorporates with. So saying, if you want to remember dog, a dog barks, a dog eats meat, or a cat meows at a person, or you can make your own funny sentence, and it's a better way to remember just the word. So if you only have the word, it's going to be a bit hard.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
are some of your ways that you use with your students?
Well, it's tough. I mean, for students, like for me, it's my way of learning is repetition for sure, but like I'm not someone who likes to make post-it notes or something like that. I'm super lazy.
Okay.
But
Right.
I used to use an app called Anki. It was super good. Like it's like a repetition based on time. So if you knew the answer to the word, it's like a flashcard device, but it's on your phone, so you don't have to write anything. So you have the word there. If you know the answer, then that comes back the next day, and then you check it again the next day, and it gives you your list of words for the day. If you know it the second time, then it comes back in 2 days, and then after that 4 days, and then after that a week. And for me, that was super useful because you can put a lot of vocabulary down at one time, and also because it's just super simple. You know, once you put it in, it's all ready for you, and it comes. And like words that maybe you feel like one of the biggest problems I think is like even for a native speaker, if you don't use a word, you lose it. You know,
Exactly.
you forget
You
what
need
it.
to know how to use it. That's what
Yeah,
I tell my students.
yeah. So especially like scientific vocabulary, 100% I will not remember it. So if I needed it for English, for example, I could chuck it in this, and then I'm wanting to learn new words anyway, so I regularly update it for my Japanese anyway. I regularly update it, and then these old words come back up, and even if I haven't used them in a conversation, super useful because then it props up one more time. So that is my core way of learning. If I'm teaching someone, I usually write everything down so they have the opportunity if they need to. I don't pressure my students into like, everyone's busy. I always think they have got no time to do anything but
think
my one
pictures
lesson.
also help. So
Yeah, 100%.
if I have lessons with even adults, kids or adults, always a picture, trying to get them to have this image in their head, not to link it with the Chinese word, but to link it with the picture. So, and also ask them to make their own sentence after you understand what the word means. So if you understand it, you should be able to use it. And then after each of my lessons, we always have to write I ask the students to write a class review on what they learned in the class. And so the next class, I can always have some time at the beginning of class to ask them, oh, so what is the word that we talked about? Do you remember what this is called? So stuff like that. So I think it's really important to review the things. So
Yeah, definitely.
they do need, I read somewhere that you need to remember or to think of, to remember it, you need to see it 7 times. So it takes a while for them to actually really have it in their pocket. But if you remind them, then they'll remember it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I get you. I'm a big fan of the repetition thing. I think it's key. Even like I think speech is the best way to practice anything to help you remember. Because the key thing that I think students don't see is when they make a mistake, they're more likely to remember it anyway. So it's good making mistakes. I always remember all those errors. I never remember the good things. So you know,
that's very true.
You know, so in anything, in work, or you just think, oh, what's stupid? Why did I do that? But then you remember it, and it comes back like later, and then in a month's time, you're like, oh, I was so stupid doing that back then, but I'd never do that again. You know, and that kind of, yeah. Mistakes are great. Mistakes maybe are the best way to learn anything, but yeah. A question I always used to get from my students online: how long does it take to become fluent? So we talked about this briefly.
That is actually a question I get very often as well. I think it really depends on how much time and effort you're willing to put into it. And by so saying is that I really think that you should incorporate English into your daily life. So fluent, if you want to speak, to practice speaking, first you have the pronunciation, what you can do by yourself is that I would ask my students to either choose a TV show, or even if they want to learn more about the news. If it's British accent, they would like to learn BBC. If it's American accent, it could be something like CNN or any American reporter that you will get to listen to what they're saying and then to stop and to repeat after them. And what is even better is if you can do some recording. So record yourself and to play it after the reporter reports it as well. So you can to really hear about what the difference is, or is it similar? Is it not? If you're just speaking it, you can't really hear yourself.
Yeah, that's such a key point. That's such a key point. I think we don't know what our voice sounds like to begin with, because we never have needed to, you know, in a sense. We hear it like through like a sensory system, but it's very different. You record yourself and listen to it. It's crazy the difference to what you think it is in your head and what you hear. And only since making videos did I realize that. But I think that's such a good point. It really is. If you want to mimic or you want to practice that kind of style of language, like your pronunciation anyway, that is a good way of doing it, is to record yourself as well alongside. Because I always say mirroring is quite good. It's not perfect. It's good though. If you really want to nail pronunciation, it's all about the phonics of the specific dialect or accent you're looking at. But for students who are mimicking, is a good idea. Yeah, definitely recording. I think that evaluation period is super important for students, but it's not so often used. So that's a great method of evaluation for sure.
Right. So that's something that students can practice themselves. So pronunciation is one. And fluency, you will really need someone to talk to. So if you can't find a partner to talk with, a teacher is someone there who can help you correct your mistakes. So one of my students, he actually looked for a lot of different teachers, and some of the teachers, he said he found he wasn't really improving. The reason was that the teacher was just listening to him talking. They weren't really
no reaction.
correcting him. Or I found it very helpful for students is if I wrote down what he said and my corrections. So it's something that they can have and actually see it, because most students, reading is their strong suit. So much better than speaking, because reading they have been practicing and writing throughout their childhood. And speaking is really the part that they lack this. And this is something that they have found if they want to work in an international company, this is something they must have.
Yeah,
so actually, another thing I found very interesting is they, especially my Taiwanese students, they are very shy and they don't know how to make a conversation with their colleagues or their foreign colleagues, because the small talk part is really something they struggle with. And that is something I find a lot of my students ask me for help for.
Yeah, well,
quite interesting.
I completely can understand that, because business English and informal language is so different. It's like they're two different languages. They really are, aren't they? And small talk, that is where it's super informal and laziness from a native speaker comes in, you know. And I am a victim of that, 100%. But, you know, it is its own thing for sure. That's what for me makes English so tough. You know, like you said, people learn through books mainly within Asia, from what I've experienced and the people I've spoken to. And there's little or next to no speaking practice. And then when the speaking practice comes in, it's very limited and with like a non-native speaker. And you don't have to be with a native speaker, but you know what I mean. It's like super non-native speaker, who knows little English themselves, and they're just being able to deal with the situation that they're in the school, and then they come out, and then it's frightening, isn't it? Because what you learn is perfect structure, and then you come into a small talk situation, and then it's like, what is this? It's like a mess. It really is a mess. Like, it's crazy. So that must be tough. And like you say, I've experienced the same with Japanese students. They are very shy. So it's hard, a double amount of difficulty there.
So do you find it hard to, did you teach when you were back in England, or
no?
Was it your first time teaching in Japan?
I did teaching in different ways. So not as an English teacher. When I went to school, I studied football coaching. So I did some football coaching for a few years, and then I managed, I was part of management teams. I managed a bit in a couple of different hotels and pubs. So I did a different style of teaching again, like training staff. And then I worked with adults with learning disabilities. So that's kind of like teaching them life skills and also training staff during that time as well. So a bit different, but varied enough to get enough experience to deal with many different people. So it was nice, really super nice. And but I found in England, the amount of time someone would ask you a question is much greater, you know, than abroad. So
they're very proactive. They're encouraged to ask questions. Whereas in Asian countries, they're not so much encouraged to do so.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in my workplace, that happens quite a lot. So I'm kind of open for discussion, and I think people are not so open because they're not used to that style. It's very different. West is very different, you know. So it's super interesting. And then that culture then leads into when they learn something new. So it's tough, but asking questions, like we said before, is super important. So yeah. So you've spent a year's quite a long time, I think, already as a teacher. You must have had people from different cultures. So where would you say the most common nation that you've dealt with? Is it just Taiwan that you've dealt with, or have you had many different
mostly
nationalities?
Taiwanese, and I had some students from Hong Kong.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so mainly these two, and also kids from China. So
Yeah.
mainly from the Asian countries. So that's why I've been encouraging them a lot to ask questions. It's totally fine to make mistakes. I'll be happy that you're making some mistakes. And so, yeah. So that's why I was interested to hear from you if you had experience with the two different type of cultures, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So Japan's similar to China, not similar, but like there's some similarities, obviously. Quite a lot of Asia has some similar characteristics. It's not all exactly the same, obviously, but it's interesting because I've had a real broad range, like Russia and Brazil and Europe and some Asian countries as well when I was online teaching, and just the difference in the way people asked. It's either blunt, like just with no politeness. Like in England, we're super polite on everything, almost too polite.
Right.
And then some countries, there's no politeness at all. And then some people don't ask. And dealing with all those different people is super interesting. I find it really enjoyable. But yeah, super interesting. So there's only around about 3 minutes left already.
Okay.
So
okay. Wow.
Is there anything you want to promote while you're here?
Well, other than my Instagram page, there's also my blog, which if any of you learners are more interested in any of the content on my Instagram, there's going to be much more examples, or there's going to be some practice questions also available in the blog. So that's somewhere to check out. And if anyone has TikTok, yes, that's something new that I have started to join as well. So feel free to join me and, yeah, ask me any questions.
Your blog,
and thank you so much. Yes.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Your blog, has it got is it on, what's the website name, do you know?
Wix. I have it on, I made it on Wix. So, yeah, the page is on my link in the bio on my Instagram page. Yeah, so you'll easily find it there. And thank you so much for inviting me to join you tonight. I had a wonderful evening.
Yeah, no problem. It's great to learn some new, it's so fascinating that you're in different countries. So that's, just to hear that is super interesting for me, to hear that a teacher's doing it in that style, you know, and that it's made you so free to be able to do whatever you want. It's great. Yeah, thank you very much for coming on. I'm so happy that many people came in and enjoyed listening to you. So that's great. Really, really happy for that.